we're in part 2, chapter 8. So let me kind of give you a recap of, or not a recap, but a schedule of what's going to happen in the next few weeks. So next Wednesday night is Chili and Caroling. And Chili and Caroling is a prelude to other Wednesday nights the first of the year because, no, we're not going to go caroling every Wednesday night, but we are going to eat. So we are going to be starting back having Wednesday night dinners. As you remember, a couple of years ago, a few years ago, maybe we had Wednesday night dinners. We loved them. It was just hard to keep sustaining them with all the work it took to do that. But it was great because you didn't have to get dinner ready for your family. You just came to church. And we had dinner, and it was very reasonably priced, very reasonably priced. You couldn't get McDonald's Happy Meals as cheap as we were doing our dinners. We got to hang out, have fellowship with one another, and really get to know each other with all the time we had, about almost an hour before we had to get ready for service. So I'm excited about that going to be happening next year. But for the rest of this year, we have Chili and Caroling next Wednesday night, so please come out. It's a great time. We have 2 or 3 houses that we're going to go to. Well, 2 houses and 1 nursing home. And it won't take very long. We don't spend a bunch of time there. And since we don't go to Lucy's Hats and she doesn't knit us, Lucy's house, she doesn't knit us hats anymore. We get in and out. So it'll be fun. We'll have a good time. I'll be making chili. So hopefully the other stuff will come along with that. It'll be great. And then the next Wednesday night is Christmas, and the next Wednesday night is the first of the year, is January 1st. So this will be the last Bible study for 2019. And then we will begin again next year with our Wednesday night dinners. I'm looking forward to that. It is one of my favorite times having Wednesday night dinners. I love them. So we talked last week. We were talking about... is it normal for people to actually ask for forgiveness? And the answer to that was no, it's very rare. Anybody need a booklet? We printed some new ones fresh off the mint. Need a booklet? Dennis needs a booklet. Can someone get Dennis a booklet? And Susan. And looks like the Taylors need a book also. And Susie maybe. So again, it's I don't know how many, what would you say the percentage of people that have wronged you in your life that came back and asked forgiveness? What would you say the percentage of that would be, roughly? 0%. Well, yeah, but you don't ever do anything to wrong anybody. Or no, I'm sorry. People wronged you. No, okay. What would you say? Pretty low, isn't it? Pretty low percentage of people that actually come back and say, I kind of wronged you, I kind of messed up. I've had it happen many times in my life over the years. Been a lot of years of ministry, and people that have misunderstandings about things and came to apologize for things, but it's not as often as people should do that. And why do you think it's hard for people to ask forgiveness?
They have to swallow their pride. They have to admit they did something wrong.
Yeah, Mark.
Sometimes you have to kind of read between the lines, though. They may not actually say it, but sometimes their attitude changes toward you.
Yeah. Yeah, you can. Doesn't always bring healing when they don't. We have this dun 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 dun. We have that need for completion and fulfillment. We have that need. We can't just leave that hanging. And so since we have that need, when people do those kinds of things where they don't come back, but they do treat us better, it kind of feels better to us, right? And sometimes we can just let that go. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight, is this idea of letting stuff go. There was a commercial on TV not too long ago, one of the NFL players, a good receiver, and everything stuck to his hands. His trash can stuck to his hands. Everything stuck to his hands no matter what he was. And I think sometimes for us, as it relates to offenses, we have things stick to us. We don't want them to stick to us, but they kind of do stick to us. I talked to someone not too long ago, and they said, I've forgiven this person, and everything was going good until I saw them in the store, and then I went the other way. I didn't want to talk to them at all. I said, so then do you think you forgave them really? It's like, no, I don't. And they kind of, things kind of stick to us. So here's a question in our notes. Are the birds of life coming back to wipe bitterness off of your face? It says, no, birds don't ever come back and wipe it off. Most people are like the birds, and only a few come back to ask forgiveness. And what they mean, there was a story that he was telling in the book, but it's not necessarily to go through it. But the idea is that there are things that happen in our life that it's much easier and better for us to let it go, because it's not going to be resolved. It's not going to be resolved. There are things that we need to correct in our life. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about old hurts. How many of you have hurts from when you were growing up? You hold on to some hurts, right? Some of those people no longer are living. Some of those people you're never going to see again. People who've wronged you, you know. Every time I look at a post that my former pastor, who I worked with for 16 years in 2 different churches, who fell in sin, who, when I was going through a very difficult time, you know, really wasn't there for me emotionally or financially when I needed some real help. He betrayed my trust and my love, and it was really hard and rough. When I see him on Facebook all smiley, I'm okay with it, really, because I've kind of made peace with it. I recognize that it wasn't that he sinned against me, it's that he sinned against God. And he hurt me. Okay? So there's this thing I want you to think about. Remember when we talk about anger, anger is a secondary emotion. It's what's underneath that's really important, and that's hurt. Hurt is underneath anger. I've said before, they're sisters, they always hang out together. When you are angry, you have been hurt. Okay? And if we're very smart and diligent in our thinking, if we remember that, so that when we get angry, instead of focusing on the anger, we focus on the hurt. Why am I hurt? Why did this hurt me? I was talking to a pastor today who had a situation in his church with somebody that was working with him, and all of a sudden the guy is going in a totally different direction. They've been working together for 5 years, thought they were friends, and the guy is totally going a different direction and didn't say a word to the pastor about it. And he's worked with him, has been on his staff for 5 years. And he was very mad about that. And he said, I'm sorry, I'm so angry. And so I looked at him and I said, what hurts you about this? He said, he goes, that's a good question. I said, I know you're angry. That's easy. Right? How many of you know our anger is our easiest emotion to show? I mean, it really is easy. Some people have an easier time showing anger than they have showing joy. Do you know people like that? I know people like that. They have a hard time finding the good in anything, but they have an easy time picking out the bad, picking out what's wrong, picking out what somebody did or what somebody said or something and make them angry. So he said, that's a very good question. I'm going to have to think about that. I said, well, we just started eating. You got half an hour at least. Think about it while we're talking about other things. He said, you know what it is? He said, there are times when we didn't have everything. I mean, they didn't have what they needed, and we provided it for them because we thought we were a family, thought we were close. There are times that we gave to them and did things for them when we didn't have it because they were in need worse than we were. There are times when, I didn't hold them to the same work ethic as I have held on to because I knew he was working another job. And he went on and talked about the devaluing that he felt, the discounting that he felt by this individual because, and I told him, I said, well, tonight, guess what I'm talking about? And I said, I'm talking about forgiveness. And guess what I'm talking about? I'm talking about being able to let it go. He said, no, that's a whole different story. I said, so do you think that forgiveness and letting go are different? What do you think? Is forgiveness and letting go different? Not at all. You seem pretty sure about that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, here's what I feel is that our feelings, our emotions, our anger towards that situation or individual informs us about what's inside us. That make sense? So when I meet somebody and they're very, very defensive, it informs me about some brokenness inside them because they're so defensive about something they shouldn't be defensive about. If you've ever seen somebody who, for very little reason, gets very, very angry at you, just for you having to get over in the other lane because there's a car stopped up there or something, and they get very, very angry at you, right? Somehow they felt discounted by you. And you could, if you were sitting in the car with them and you were a psychologist, you might say what we said last week, where have you felt like this before? And they'll be able to recount and recount all the times that they felt discounted, that they didn't matter. They didn't feel like they mattered. They felt like they were invisible, or they felt like that no one really cared. So what I'm thinking about is us being in touch with the fact that spiritually speaking, and again, this is spiritually speaking, and like I said before, when we're speaking about what is spiritual, how many of you know that what's emotional is right next door? When Violet was first diagnosed with leukemia, I had to discern every single day, was I in denial about her leukemia or was I acting in faith? Do you understand my dilemma? Can you articulate what you think I might have felt by that and what I mean by saying that? So.
Well, for me, I would think that, by faith, we're expecting her to heal,
Yes.
but at the same token, emotionally, you may not want to face what that feels like, as far as the condition that she was in at the time.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of tugging in different directions.
Good. Yeah, exactly. Well, and most of you don't have the same problem I have, which is denial, as it relates to a default mechanism. So I'm always fighting denial every day. Sandra knows I don't need any help with dealing with my denial because it's always in front of me. So as soon as I start feeling that, immediately my training and my discipline kicks in and I discount it and say that's not what I'm feeling. What I'm really feeling is this, and I face my feelings because it's something that I do, and I'm getting pretty good at it to where I don't think that is a default mechanism anymore. Mark?
I think it's hard because you can have faith that God's going to heal someone, and then they die.
Yeah.
And so you could look back and say that you were in denial because it didn't work.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to. I don't know.
Yeah. So, yeah. So think about what faith is. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the things not what? Not seen. Denial is the substance of things hoped for and the things that I will not see. I won't look at them. Yeah.
I think it's okay to, and I'm saying this to myself because it just dawned on me, it's okay to believe that things are gonna change simultaneously as you breathe what you see in the moment.
Wow.
The pain of what you see in the moment. You don't have to separate both in order to have faith. I can believe and hope that my child will get better and believe God without a doubt will do it, and still feel and experience the pain and the hurt of what they're in the moment.
Amen.
Simultaneously, and it will not discount my faith.
Amen. So well said. And I want you to grasp that. Because again, who set up this system that we have in our lives? Our faith, our denial, all that. Who gave us those abilities? It's God who gave us those abilities. He knows that they're almost going to be simultaneous. He knows they're going to be right next. He put them right next to each other. Just like he knows we're battling with our flesh because he left it for us. Someone said the dirty dog. Don't call God a dirty dog. He left it for us. He left that flesh for us just in the same as some of the emotional issues that we have are right next to the faith issues that we have. And it's very difficult sometimes to, but it could be simultaneous. It could be, I'm faithful for this, and then all of a sudden something else might hit us. Now, people in the word of faith moment would have a problem with you. Okay? What is the Word of Faith movement? What do they believe? Because some of you haven't really encountered that. Mark?
I think the gist of it is like there's power in the words and the positive thinking that you have, and that if you have negative thoughts or negative words, that it actually causes that thing to happen.
Yes.
No, I've been in Word of Faith. It means that your faith is totally discounted the moment you begin to feel the reality of what you see.
Yep,
So
okay.
you have no emotions. You only lean towards faith. So you're walking completely and beyond being human. So it's almost like you have to remove yourself from your humanity completely. Although you're in a human body, human emotion, that does not exist. It's not real. Only this.
Yes.
And it's very troubling.
Yep. Both of those definitions are better than what I had in my notes, so good job, people. They're excellent. And it's really, really true. And both of those definitions of how we see it is exactly the way it is. It's kind of like I can remember one time, okay, my nose is running. Okay, my nose is running. Okay, which is an indication of something, right? And I go, oh man, I think I'm getting a cold. Oh, you just signed for the package. You just told the devil you're going to get a cold. You're going to get it. You signed for the package. I'm like, what? Yeah, you said it. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm in big trouble because I say a lot of dumb stuff. Or I say a lot of things that I feel that I probably shouldn't feel according to that definition. I couldn't make it in Word of Faith, because I have a worry gene. It does creep up in there. Now, sometimes I want to tell you, I said this to you for 25 years, that that worry is practical atheism. When we worry, we're practicing being atheists because we're existing like God doesn't. We're living like God doesn't exist. And I want us to think of that as kind of in a hyperbolic way up there for you to see it, but to recognize that, the Bible says to be anxious or don't worry about anything, but by prayer and supplication, make your petitions be made known to God. So what God is telling us is that, okay, worry is not what I want you doing. Praying is what I want you doing. Praying is what I want you to be involved in instead of worry. So the antidote to worry is prayer. So Jeremy and Heather are going to, whenever they take a trip to Michigan, they're going to drive to Michigan. That's a long drive, okay? And a lot of things can happen on the way to Michigan. And so my thing to Heather is text me when you get there. Why? Because I want to check up on them? No. Because I want to know that they got there so I can what? Stop worrying about it. Now, it's not that I sit here like this, till they get there. But it's on my mind, and I call it a dark cloud. Or it's a cloud. Maybe not dark, just a cloud. It's a cloud, and they're on their way, and so they get there, and the cloud dissipates when they're there. Okay? And I'm like, okay, good. But their dad and mom live in this scary farmhouse where, axe murderers, could. I just don't worry about that, right? I don't worry about that. But just driving, right? And but the bottom line is that I really don't want to worry about it, and so I try to release it, right? I try to let it go. So that's what I want us to focus on, this process of letting go. So here's what we used to say. This is what Helen Bruce would tell me. When I said that to you right now, Helen Bruce, I just heard her say, let go and let God. Right? Did you hear her? Bumper sticker Helen saying that to me, let go, and let God. And she goes, just add one D to it. I'm like, you're brilliant, Helen. Yes, ma'am. And I can see her here going, let go, let God. She clear her throat, everything. Let go and let God. And she go like that. Okay, I'm just waxing nostalgic tonight because I miss Helen. Because I thought of that earlier today, let go and let God. That's what we're saying is when you let go of something, you let God what? Have it. You give it to Him. You turn it over to Him. Well, think about what it really would mean to let God have a bunch of stuff we've been holding on to. Man. Okay, so let's hypothetically think of somebody else, not yourself or your spouse or anybody that you know. Hypothetically, what kind of things do we as people hold on to that we need to let go of?
forgiving people or others that done things against me. Not necessarily instant, but it's easier for me to forgive others than to forgive myself.
Oh, okay,
That
good.
is like a serious thing that I still deal with.
Yes.
Think about, if you would have done this 20 years ago, blah, 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 then this path, your bond would be better.
Yeah, that's great.
I wrestle with that all the time with certain things, all sorts of different things.
Yeah. We'll take a momentary rabbit trail for a second. It is so hard to forgive ourselves for things that we forgive other people for. I mean, there are times when I go like this, like I'll think of something that wasn't my best moment, and I'll go, oh, something will go like this, it's like, why did you do that? Or why did you say that? Or something will happen that I just wish I could take it back immediately after I said it or after I did it. I can remember that. I can remember discounting somebody, not because, instead of being, for instance, this person had run 3 miles and thought it was great. And they were so happy they ran 3 miles. And I didn't get all enthusiastic about it. I just, I was probably 20. And I said, oh, that's good. And they looked at me and said, well, like you could do it. I go, well, yeah, I could do it. But that's not about me, it's about you. But it really wasn't, because I didn't go, really, 3 miles, awesome, good job, way to go. That's what I should have done, right? Because this person was really happy they ran 3 miles, really ecstatic about it. I should have just been, yeah, way to go, that's awesome. Because to them, it's like a 9 in their life or a 10 in their life. To me, running 3 miles is like a 1 or a 2. Because that time I was pretty sure I could run 10 miles and just get off the couch and go run 10 miles. So after a little discussion and a few days later, the phone call came and said, hey, let's go run. I'm like, all right. So we ran 3 miles. Okay, so you ran 3 miles. Can you keep going? Yeah. Well, then keep going. So I did. And I ran 10 miles. I ran the 3 mile route 3 times plus a little bit more. Because I was 20. I was a wrestler my whole life. I had just stopped wrestling at 19. So it was not a big deal. And that made that person so angry. I was kind of happy that it made him angry, in a way, just because I could prove it to myself. That was all pure ego, folks. Like I said before, I still had hair, so, I had ego. Without the hair, you have no ego. You lose it. It's gone. Ask any bald guy here. It's gone. But, yeah, Alan's still struggling. I don't know why he gets to keep all his hair. It's not fair at all. Yeah, the operative word is slow. But think about it for a minute. There are times when it's just, and I remember doing that, and I remember thinking later, and I remember thinking, even as I was knowing I was going to tell you that story tonight, that I wish I hadn't done that, and I felt really bad about it. Instead of rejoicing in this person's joy, I was insecure about myself. I still wanted to prove myself. I felt like I had to prove myself. Those are my childhood issues. I don't have to do that anymore, and I haven't 5 years. So hard to forgive ourselves. Okay, good rabbit trail. Thank you. Good job, Chuck. Now back to the question at hand. It doesn't have to be you, but it could be you. You can make it up. What does it? Doesn't really matter. But think about it for a minute, about what kinds of things are, in our lives in that way that are difficult for us to.
I think I've said it before, and it's kind of a slight tweak off of what he was sharing, but rather than forgiving myself, I struggle with, you can hurt me, and I can forgive that, but if you hurt someone I love,
Yeah.
then I struggle with that. Because if it's about me, that's fine, whatever. I can let that roll off my shoulders a lot easier than if you
Yeah.
hurt someone that I love and care about.
I'm gonna put a horse head in your bed. When you hurt my family, that's, wow. It's really hard. My pastor's wife in Los Angeles, a week after he was dismissed from the church. Now, this was the aunt of Bobby and Heather, because they had been in their lives. I mean, my pastor married my wife and I, and dedicated my kids, and his wife was there the whole thing, and they were in junior high when all this happened, and they lived in our neighborhood, and my kids saw her driving her car smoking a cigarette. And it just devastated Heather. I mean, it was just like the worst thing you could do, and it wasn't that she's going to go to hell because she smoked a cigarette. It was just the difference between what she was in their life, this hero woman of God, to this person who was doing worldly things. And it hurt them really badly, That, as Megan's point, is that I have a hard time looking past that. My pastor, it's easier for me to forget. I mean, he stole $1 million from the church, and every dollar I gave to the church for 11 years, he took. And used it somehow with a fake bank account. But it was easy for me to forgive him that, because he repented of it. He took responsibility for it. I can understand because of the loss of their son and some issues and all the things going on. But it's really hard for me to forgive his wife, because, she hurt my kids and almost made my kids doubt their faith. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I remember coming here as a youth pastor, meeting with the board. So, when you meet with the board, you want to give a good impression because you want the job, right? Or you wouldn't be meeting with the board. So I'm meeting with the board, and they said, do you have anything you'd like to say, And I said, yeah, I do. I said, actually, here's what I want you to understand, that there's a huge boundary around my family and I. I said, I work for the church. My family does not. My wife is a teacher. If she's got papers to grade on the weekend and she doesn't get to them till Sunday night, she probably won't be in church, because you got to get those papers done by Monday morning. I don't want to hear about it. You know why? It's none of your business. Just like if your wife isn't here, it's none of my business. I might be concerned for her, everything okay? You can be concerned for my wife, but if I say she's grading papers, don't be all judgmental on her. And don't treat my kids like any other kids. Treat my kids exactly the way you treat any other kid. If Tim throws a rock through the door, it really wasn't him. He was acquitted. But if Tim throws a rock through the door and people go, oh, well, no big deal. But if Bobby does it and Bobby gets in trouble for it because he's the pastor's kid, we're going to have a problem. Because I know that is not healthy for pastoral kids to be held to a different standard. And so that was not really what some people might not like that, but I'm setting a boundary there because, hey, don't mess with my family. They're doing all they can, and just being as a pastor's kid is hard enough. But we have this thing with our families, protect them. So it is, as Megan said, it's almost a different offense, isn't it? Hurting me is one thing. Hurting my family is another thing. It's a different offense. So you got to think about that. I just want to say one more word about offense. We live in the offense, as we said, the offensive generation. You want to offend somebody, just say what you believe, and you'll offend somebody. You'll offend them. President Trump offended people today by putting together a Jewish law, or law for the Jewish people, that lets them not be discriminated in universities and different places for being Jewish or being active as a Jewish religious person. No discrimination, just like LGBT or any other thing, the ethnic group or whatever. And people are mad about that, like it doesn't happen. It does happen. There is this, but the offensive part of things, everybody's offended by everything, and you can hardly say anything without offending somebody. I can say what I want as a pastor, but if I ran for office and said what I wanted, then I'm in trouble. I can't say those kind of things. Or own a business and don't want to provide abortion for the people that work with me or for me, I'm in trouble. You know, those are just some of the things that we have to worry about this. But so that's just another aside. But as we relate this to what other things, you know, are difficult for us to forgive? What other categories, whatever acts, whatever things can you think about that find it very difficult? Maybe it happened to you. I mean, it's hard for me to think. It's hard for me to forgive my dad for wasting all of the relationship years by drinking. It's hard for me to be okay with that in my years growing up, and until I began to think of my father as a person who was hurt by his father. Like he had it was a generational issue and problem, and my dad got it way worse than, you know, my dad got it way worse than I got it. So my dad, probably 50% less. My dad had 50% less of the alcoholic problem that his dad demonstrated to him. My dad worked on it 50% less. I gotta recognize that, right? He tried. But he had some choices that he made some wrong choices, but that was what he was led to. But it's hard, but I was able to do that. Karen, you want to say something?
I was going to say, for me, personally, it's abuse of authority, or
Yeah.
like from a perspective of whether it's not just a title of authority, but as an adult or a
Yeah.
child or any position where you have an advantage because of your power over someone else in terms of authority, or like I said, it could be age. That's hard for me, but it's usually against kids.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be my kids.
Mhm.
That's my weak spot. Any kid. You
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
mess with a kid, you use
Oh, yeah.
authority against a kid. That is very hard
That's very hard.
to let go of.
Yeah.
So
You remember my international incident I caused in Africa when one of the Middle Eastern guys was beating a child with a stick in front of me, and I stopped him from doing it. It was an international incident that I was causing, and the missionary said, "Listen, you can't do that." I said, "Well, then don't beat a child in front of me." So then maybe you shouldn't be in Africa. Well, maybe I shouldn't be, but while I'm here, anybody beats a child, I'm coming after them. You know, I'm not going to beat them, but I want to. I want to show them what this feels like, but I didn't. I just stopped him and grabbed his hand and told him, knock it off. But yeah, when somebody hurts, you know, our kids, when someone does something that tips a scale in us, a justice scale or a scale that shouldn't happen, it makes it very difficult for us, you know, to hold and to forgive and to offer that kind of forgiveness. I want to just say this, that if there are things that happen to some of you and as your childhood growing up that were terrible for you and maybe horrible for you, nothing you could do about it, nothing you can do about it now. But you remember the incident, you remember the thing that happened, and it should never have happened. And it's very painful for you. And sometimes I've had the privilege, and I mean it's a privilege, to sit in my office and someone say, "I've never told anybody this, but." I could probably count 100 times in my life where somebody offered me the most priceless gift ever of confidentiality and sharing what happened to them. And they've never told anybody in their life. And when that happens, something gets released in them. The toxic waste of this act begins to be released. It's a start, it's a journey, but it's a beginning. And it's the way in the path of forgiveness. Now, I don't bring forgiveness up to them right away. Say, well, you need to forgive them for doing what they did. Never, you know, that's what they would say. So I wouldn't say that. But I would talk to them about the pain that they felt and how inappropriate that pain was. And a lot of times I might say to somebody, why have you never told this before? Why am I the first person you're telling this to? You're not a kid. You know, you're in your 40s. So, well, I always felt like I caused it or I did something to make it happen. I remember talking to one person who had been abused by her father. And she said, "I've never been able to say this before, but I like that he touched me. I like that he touched me. He never touched me before. He'd come into my room, He would sit with me. He would talk with me. He would hug me, and he'd give me some kisses. Because I was starving for that. And I liked it. So I'm wrong, I'm bad. I go, no, sweetie. No, you're not. You're a child. You're a starved child for affection. And this person took advantage of that. And you are a victim. You know, it feels good to be loved and caressed, even if it's wrong. The kids that are now adults that are talking about Michael Jackson, when they were asked when they were kids if they had been abused, they said, no, he never abused us. He just loved us. Because it felt like love. You know, it wasn't until they had children of their own that they began to see it as abuse and call it abuse, because it's a power differential. It's a terrible, terrible thing. When I think I was 11, I was babysitting a little girl across the street that played with my sister all the time. Her mom and dad went out, and I watched them. They came home, and I was standing there waiting to get my $1 or my 50 cents or whatever for the 4 hours they were gone. And she said in front of me, "Did Bobby touch you?" And she said, "Yes." And she turned around and slapped me in the face. And I just ran home. So I come home, I got red all over my face, I'm crying. Mom said, "What happened?" I said, "She slapped me." I said, "Why?" "I don't know." She said, "Did you touch my, she asked her daughter if I touched her, and she said, yes, and then she slapped me." My mom said, "She did what?" That blankety, whoa. I had never heard my mom with those combinations before, as she was getting her coat on and her clothes on to dress, her shoes and everything. She marched. Come on, let's go. She marched as fast as she could over that house. She almost kicked the door down and said, did you hit my son? And did you ask him the dirtiest, filthiest question you could ask him? And she said, "Well, he touched my daughter." My mom looked at the little girl and said, "Where did he touch you?" He said, "Well, he touched me on the shoulder, and then he touched me on top of the head, and then he gave me, a pat." So he just touched you on top. Yeah. How many times did he touch you? Oh, maybe 3 times. The little girl just was telling the truth. She didn't know what touching was and the way that the dirty mom thought about it. And my mom, to tell you, went off on her. That lady was cowering in the corner. This little 5'2" lady was making this woman cry and cower. And I was going, "Get her, Mom, get her. Get her. Because I didn't know what touching meant either. I was 10 or 11. I had no idea what you're talking about. And if you came and said, "Did you touch her?" I go, "Yeah, several times." I touch my sisters every day. I touch my brothers every day. I touch myself every day. I didn't know idea what this meant. Oh my goodness. And when I think about that, and you think about putting yourself in my mom's place and how hard that would be. My mom still held on to things about that lady for a long, long time. She never let us babysit for anybody ever again. It was terrible. So we all have these things. We have these things in our past. We have these things in our families. We have these things, and that we have to recognize that in order to make sense of them, they have to come to light. So here's what I say. Okay, so here's 2 family systems. I'll close in about 2 minutes. We have open family systems and we have closed family systems. Open family systems have what I call light and air gets in. The light of God, the light of Jesus, the air of the Holy Spirit gets in. And when something happens that's bad, it gets light and air, and someone talks about it. In a closed system, which my family was a closed system, we never talked about my dad's alcoholism. If my dad bruised me, I fell or got in a fight with my brother. We never said my dad hit me, ever. Those were fighting words from my mom. I mean, you never got to say what happened when you had a bruise if your dad gave it to you. Or my dad slapped me one time, bloodied my nose one time, which was easy to do. You know, I could flick it and bloody it when I was a kid. But my dad slapped me one time and bloodied my nose. And of course, I blew it all out to get blood everywhere, you know. And I walked outside. My mom said, if you say anything about what happened to your nose, she said, you'll get a beating worse than you've ever gotten before. You get back in here, right? That blood off your face. I said, no, I want everybody to see it. See what Dad did. And she said, get blankety blank in here. And I got right back in there. And she made me go wash up and wait till my nose stopped bleeding. It says, you do not ever say that because something can happen that would be bad. And my mom was just being a good child of an alcoholic herself, an enabling child of an alcoholic. And I'm telling you, you know, those things, they're there in our lives. And they're hurt sometimes in people's lives. And if they don't expose it to air and light, it stays in this dark, damp, toxic environment. A closed system is unhealthy. An open system is healthy. When I read my Bible, it describes an absolute open system. If somebody has done something wrong to you, wait till it's dark and beat them up. No. It doesn't say that. It says, go to them. If you're at the altar trying to pray to God and an offense comes to your mind, you're not doing any good up here at the altar. Go to that person and talk to them about what happened so you can get rid of it and let it go. Let go of it. It's harming you. It's awful. It's one of those things that when we release it, there's something that happens. The energy of it begins to dissipate. I had somebody this year call me and do some counseling and tell me something that they'd never told anybody else. And I talked to him not too long after that, and he said, it is amazing what one thing that I was afraid of my whole life talking about, and having talked about it, released it from me. And I feel like a new person. I feel like 100 pounds has just dropped off my chest. I don't think about it every moment of every day anymore. I just let it go. I gave it to God. But I had to say the words first. So in the full circle of what Word of Faith says, that's not what we're talking about here. Okay, speaking it, but coming to terms with something releases it from us. Last thing, I had a teacher that was not a good teacher. Did not like me because I was argumentative. But let me just help you with what I mean by argumentative. If you tell me, Pastor Bob, you shouldn't sit like this if you have a bulging disc, I'm not going to say, oh, okay, thanks. I'm going to say, why? I went to my chiropractor and she said, so your disc is slipped, you know, you have this bulging disc, we need to do that. I said, could you show me what a bulging disc looks like? She didn't say, well, I'm the chiropractor. I just said that. I'm the doctor. You're not. Do you have doctor behind your name? No. You just have reverend. What does that mean? No, she said, yeah, I'll show you. And she showed me. I got a visual of it. I recognized what things make it go squeeze it, what things release it, by looking at this spine that she had and this disc that was ruptured or whatever it was, herniated. I go, oh, okay, thank you. I can tell you how many times I've asked questions in a class. In this one class I have with this teacher, every time I asked a question, she thought I was coming against her. She thought I was, was doubting her. Last story about that is when I was in school for therapy, my professor said the therapeutic hour is 50 minutes. I said, well, I don't understand. The therapeutic hour is 50 minutes. Inside I wanted to say, no, it's not. That's the therapeutic 50 minutes. An hour, by definition, is 60 minutes. So 50 minutes cannot be an hour. Someone's getting gypped. And my sense of justice would not allow that to happen. I said, so I raised my hand. I said, yes, Mr. Cave. I said, why is the therapeutic hour 50 minutes? Just like that. Not like, no, it's not. I mean, I filtered, right? That was a perfect question, I thought. I mean, really thought it was a great question. Why is the therapeutic hour only 50 minutes instead of an hour? So again, she goes, because I said it is. So, of course, I love that response. So to my master's degree professor, doctor, I said, okay, thanks, Mom. She turned red and blotchy. I mean, immediately blotchy and red. She goes, Mr. Cave, see me after class. I said, okay, happy to, sorry. Because I knew I stepped in it big time. But it reminded me so much of my 5th grade teacher. She didn't tell me why. She just told me she was the boss, and that's why.
Well, and to your defense, in a master's level program, you're supposed to think critically and not just accept answers like that.
There's my girl. There's my girl. And so after class, she said, Mr. Cave, why do you challenge me all the time? I said, I am sorry, Doc. I was not challenging you whatsoever. I simply asked a question. I said, I've said before, I'm a why learner. Just tell me why. If you told me why, I'd understand it. So what she said was, well, the reason it's a 50 minutes as opposed to an hour is because people do this for a living. And they see clients one after another. And usually at the top of the hour or the bottom of the hour. So they need some time to refresh themselves, to go to the bathroom, to write their process notes, refresh themselves, get ready for the next client. And I said, oh, that makes sense to me. That's a great answer. Thank you. I want to say, why couldn't you tell me that before?
Right.
You know, and she goes, well, I have to apologize. You tapped into my first husband. You channeled my first husband. And I said, I'm sorry. Is that what the blotchiness is about? She said, yeah, I embarrassed myself, you know. And I said, well, I am so, absolutely so sorry to do that. And so she said, I said, well, I just want you to know, Doc, I do not feel that I can ask you a question ever again. And I'm a why learner. That's going to be difficult for me. All I just have to know is why. She goes, you can't accept something just on the surface of it? I said, you know, Freud could have made that 50-minute rule up because he wanted to take cocaine. Who knows? Okay? Who knows what freaky person made that fit? Some wimpy guy couldn't go an hour. What's wrong with you? So she asked me, she said, Mr. Cave, do you think you'll go 50 minutes? I said, nope. I said, someone's getting gypped. I'm not going to do it ever. I never have. I've never have seen somebody for 50 minutes. And I would forego the break, and I have a great therapeutic memory, so it wasn't a problem. And it's one of those things where I think that's, you know, I just, and if my therapeutic hour was 50 minutes, then your therapeutic dollar is 90 cents. And again, not making any friends at the university.
Well, the other side of that coin too, though, is that you're not in office back to back to back to back to back to back to back typically.
Yeah,
I mean, that's, you know, if that was your
yeah.
Monday through Friday every day.
Yeah. But again, that, you know, I mean, I did yesterday. It was like back to back to back. I said, man, I gotta go potty. But it was not 50 minutes. It was an hour and 5 minutes, and an hour and 5 minutes, and an hour and 5 minutes. It's just how I roll, people. Anyway, let's stand together. Good discussion. Thanks, guys. You guys are awesome. So I asked this question of somebody that I know and love and trust, and I said, so we've been talking about forgiveness for months now. And they said, well, yeah, but we don't always talk about forgiveness. We talk about everything around forgiveness. I said, so it's okay? You think it's okay? I go, yeah. So this is not going to hurt my feelings. Are you okay with us after the first year to continue as we're going through our booklet?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not going to hurt my feelings because I get tired of stuff too. Okay. All right. I'm excited about next year. Excited about next week. And then excited about Christmas and New Year's as well. Father, thank you for all you do in our lives. Thank you for wonderful people who put up with me and my junk me and how I think and feel sometimes. And I think it's only right because I put up with theirs. And I think we do it together because we bear with one another, we love one another, we care for one another. It's a community, Lord, of faith and a community of trust and of love. I thank you for that, Lord. I thank you that we can share with each other the things that are going on in our lives and that we could other with our attention and our time. We love you and we thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.